For the next note on rethinking research funding models for DeepTech Science Advancements, we welcome Dr. Sudhir Kamat. He was Director of Microwave Tube Research and Development Center at DRDO, presently leads DRDO Industry Academia Raman Center of Excellence at the Indian Institute of Science, Bengaluru, focusing on boosting and sustaining development of advanced technologies for future defense systems and platforms through multidisciplinary and multi-institutional collaboration efforts. Will this be the next DARPA? So let's welcome Dr. Sudhir Kamat. Thank you.
Thank you. Am I audible?
You are.
Yeah. Okay. So I don't have any presentation because I thought I will be sharing my experience so far. So I thank Nasscom for giving me this opportunity, and also thank the earlier speaker, Dr. Vasist. Sorry, I think. Sorry, I'm not getting the name. The earlier speaker, who is actually gave a real in-depth picture of the startup ecosystem and Atal innovation centers which has been initiated, and thought-provoking graphs which he has really given. But in my talk, I'm trying to give a different dimension. As you all know, that government initiative and then present focus is to give how to make this nation a developed nation by 2047. And you know that to make India as a developed nation by that time, it is important that apart from food and healthcare, the technology needs to be nurtured. And as long as we are technology dependent, we cannot call ourselves as a developed nation or maybe a strong nation. Now, India, the big picture, if you see, what I have seen from DRDO's point of view, or maybe a strategic system development point of view, or even at the commercial systems, you know that most of the industry, they are developing the big systems, maybe subsystems. But when it comes to the basic component level development or materials, we are very, very far behind. And this we have seen by our experience that any defense equipments, when we are buying or when you are developing it here, we have almost 90+% of dependency on component and materials. And that's where if you see the indigenized defense equipment or maybe any other strategic equipments, we find the indigenous component maybe around 50%, 60%, but it is not good enough. That's what I can say. Now, why it is happening? See, when you talk about deep tech, now material development and component development is actually a deep tech. Of course, as it was brought out by earlier speaker, Dr. Vasist, that the Atal Innovation Center in the schools or maybe in the colleges, when you say, I mean, he rightly said that the startups or ecosystem or the incubators which has been used, the simpler thing to do is maybe IT based or maybe digital based system or maybe subsystem development. But when you talk about real science, which actually supports the deep tech, where are we? I think on this platform, I'd also like to share a thought that if you talk about, we have huge number of private and government driven colleges, but where are we leading to? We are mostly focusing on technology driven colleges, but are we really supporting science driven colleges? And without that, how do you support the HR requirement or maybe thought process for even making a deep tech successful? I think this is apart from, okay, what you have said, the funding part, but I think this is one of the things which I thought it should be given thought about. How do you really support? I mean, just give an example. We have number of engineering colleges, maybe a lot of engineers are coming up, and ultimately all of them or most of them land up in IT sector or maybe land up in a digital driven system. Where is the manufacturing going? Because manufacturing is the area where actually we need a deep tech background. Without that, we cannot make our manufacturing world class. So this has to be thought about, and some action point need to be brought by the policymakers to support the BSc or MSc, the science-driven degrees, where we should get some extra incentive or encouragement for the people to start entering into that area. Otherwise, what I saw during last 1 decade or maybe a couple of decades, the influx of the students in that direction is actually declining. and it is almost coming to zero, and I think that is not a good sign. Now, coming back to the deep tech, I think deep tech generally is driven by deep science, and deep science requires basic processes and also the raw materials development. Now, if many of the people or speakers who are available here, if they are involved in strategic area or if they are involved in basic science development activity, we depend most of the time for even the basic high-end materials requirement for import, and we do not have any policy or any guidelines in place how to develop even basic raw materials or chemicals are not available. Now, coming to the dependency on because the dependency on the process is there. We also depend, like recent times, I think you have been hearing government is pushing hard for the component level development by having foundries. And we also have the similar problem there. No industries coming forward wholeheartedly to really develop the component, which can be made independent or indigenously, and which also helps in India making secured systems. Now, why it is happening? Because the process equipments are not indigenously available. We have to depend on import of process equipment. We have to depend on imported raw materials. We have to depend on import of chemicals. All that dependency, unless it is minimized, I will not say removed, because even the developed countries also has dependency, but how much we are dependent is what we have to take it into account. Now, I'll give an example of China. Unfortunately, I think our own neighbor. If you look back during late 90s, Chinese, which we can see very clearly, lot of publications started, maybe good, maybe bad. They were not good at English, but they have started publishing. Lot of basic science deep tech science activity, it appears would have started at that time. And of course, they got support from maybe like USSR when it disintegrated, and a lot of input they got. And of course, India also got some of the information from there. But this deep tech science is supported in that country for last 3 decades. And the result of that continuous long-term support has been giving result today. You can see recent times, lot of development, even beyond what the developed countries have been talking about, and nobody knows how much they have developed and how far they are, because there are other limitations. Now, countries like this, if you see that even the developed countries, that material development dependency, it is not that if you take the periodic table out of 90 elements, you may not be having all the elements in the country, but can we say that some of the raw materials, which is more critical to our requirement, whether we are not depending outside, and how do you develop those things? And that is where I think the startup ecosystem and the funding has to be given. And that is what very nicely said earlier speaker also, that when you see the statistics, most of the startups, if you see that IPs are available, but startups are not in that direction, maybe because many IPs, how much returns they are giving, which you are not really looking at. And that is where I think we may have to focus upon, and we need to have the concept as to how to support long-term sustainability model. Now, just giving briefly for a few minutes, I can just talk about the initiative with DRDO has also taken, where this is one of the center where to support such long-term activity, the DRDO Industry Academia centers have been opened. 15 centers are there in various leading education institute, not only IITs and ISC, but also some of the other universities also, where DRDO is trying to fund the TRL level, maybe 2 and up to 5 or 6 through these centers. Of course, there are some other mechanisms available where basic research, where extramural research activity can be supported, where TRL level 1 to 2 can be done. And also there is a mechanism available where TRL level beyond 6 or 7, which can be productized, that facilities there. But through this center, the main purpose is to go deep tech and support. We actually collaborate with academia, also industry and startup, or maybe MSMEs through these centers, which get involved during the development activity, and also which is relevant to strategic sectors. So that is the initiative which has been taken, and enough funding is available through the center. So through this platform, I'd like to also bring to the notice of industry that they should, in case they have any such requirement, they can interact through this center, and also take support of academia, and we can develop whichever is relevant to the study sector or defense sector for India. Now, coming to government funding, you know that deep tech or maybe for the long-term strategic funding requirement, is we need to have fund. Right now, the mechanism which is available is traditionally it is from the government sector. But again, there is a limitation. So if you say if government funding is given, it is limited for maybe 3 years or 5 year duration. There is no model right now available in government sector, most of the department, where you can say for 15 to 20 years, I will support if there is any activity. So now if that is the case, then the agency, there is no policy in place, first of all. And also, if I say about it, GFR policy also does not say, because if you say deep tech, the fail rate, sorry, I think my time is up, but I may take few more minutes. If you say the GFR policy itself, we do not have a policy in place where there is a acceptance of failure when you do deep tech, because as you know, even I think initially DARPA model has been stated, if you go to the statistic, maybe 5 to 10% projects are really successful. 90% plus is actually a failure. May not be a failure, but it gives knowledge generation. But then that type of funding, maybe it is terminated in between, maybe it is tried for longer duration, but then there is no policy in place that such money, if it goes down the drain, if I can call it so, what is the mechanism? Because people who are taking the funding is becoming answerable. Similarly, other department, maybe DST and maybe MIT. Now, I understand recent times their policies change. Now, I think they are asking, can you take, as I hear from the academics now, they are prepared to give the funding. But then the question is, they are saying that you should do a research where industry supports it. Yes, fine. That's a good idea, because then whatever you do, it may get translated to a product. But then when you involve industry, driven by industry is driven by their economics. So industry will ask you to develop something which may or may not be deep tech, because as I believe or feel that even Indian industry, even the top industries are not still geared up, are not having that mental makeup to support any deep tech activity which may yield result maybe 10 years down the line. That type of vision need to be there. Even I think another example, CSR funding, which we are talking about, most of them are spent on general purpose things, maybe making infrastructure development, road making, social requirement. Good, it should be done. But then science is also developed for the societal purposes. So can this type of funding partially can be supported for the deep tech activity? This is again policy change requirement, which should be compulsion for the industry to give such funding. Now, I think, any deep tech funding requires a very large scale and long-term sustainability model, which is right now not in place. And also it needs a more agile and risk tolerance policies and approaches, which is not there. So what I feel now, I think to conclude, the innovative model which we can think of, some of the things which I thought, or maybe as I already said, maybe some changes in the government policy on GFR. Of course, there are some modifications happening, but there may be more where the failure should not be dumped upon the PIs or maybe the researcher that, yes, you are not given anything, so much of money has been gone down the drain. It's not, because even if it's failed, that gives a lot of knowledge, and that should be acknowledged when you are talking about futuristic, long-term, where you want to really do world-class research. We need to accept some of the failures, and failures give a lot of knowledge. So I think few example like public-private partnership may be one of the things. Right now, it is only a public or maybe government support. Private partner also, as I said, the industry should also come up with some model where they can support this activity collaboratively. Maybe that because the investment required for the deep tech is lot of process equipment required, which is very costly. Maybe that funding can come from government, but then sustaining it by maintaining it, by operationalizing it, whether industry can come forward so that this activity can be taken in the long-term process. And similarly, such facilities should be available for all the researchers. Right now, unfortunately, the funding is being done, but it is lying in pockets. And if you say, maybe some just examples I'm giving it, not that it is happening, like high-end research, institutes like IITs, if they have some facility, are that facility being available to large extent to the lower end colleges or students or a professor if they want to do research? There are some models which is being worked out. I think we need to work more on that. Venture philanthropist is one of the example. Maybe that is the one where it is a more philosophical thing where some philanthropists can come and say, okay, I'm giving some money, do something on this. Similarly, crowdsourcing and citizen science, I think it is that is also one of the possibility which has been talked about, but whether Indian society is mature to that need to be worked on. And long-term research funding, which I think all the departments and all the industry, as I said, through their approaches, whichever way, we have to collaborate to think about and bring out a policy which can be supported, and then only we can do a long-term research. With this, I would thank again Nasscom for giving me an opportunity to speak and share my thoughts. Thank you very much.